So thank you everyone for watching. My name is Duane Phillips and I'm part of the Student Social Work Hub. Today I've got an amazing guest that I can't wait to introduce you to. Her name is Dr Wahida Shah Kent and she is a lecturer, and I'd just like to thank you for taking the time out, Dr Wahida Shah Kent. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, I learned that you very recently achieved your PhD status. So firstly, congratulations. What was your research about, and why did you choose the area that you decided on, and how do you feel since completing it?
Okay, so my research is with the parent carers of Black and minority ethnic children who are life limited. For 13 years, I managed a service where I worked with Black and minority ethnic disabled children and children who are life limited and worked with their parent carers. And what I found was that I was working with physical disability, mental health, learning disability, a range of issues, and life limited children. And the group that was the most socially isolated and excluded and really was struggling the most, I felt, were the parent carers of life limited children. I then looked into the research around the area, because what I noticed was that we had all these families of BME children who were disabled or life limited, and then we had services on the other hand. So families needed support and services were offering support. However, the two did not seem to meet somehow. So as a service, we were the bridge and we would put them in contact. And when I'd speak to families and ask them if they wanted support, they would say, yes, we do need and want help and support from formal services. However, when I'd speak to the practitioners and deliverers of formal services, they would say that the disconnect or lack of engagement with that group was due to religion being a barrier. So BME families didn't want services. They would blame culture and identify that as a barrier, or they would refer to the overrepresentation or the extra layer of informal support that BME families had. And however, that wasn't my practice experience. So I looked at the research and I found that the research, also the academic research, put forward that these were the barriers. Religion, culture, ethnicity, and a greater availability of informal support were the reasons identified for this lack of engagement with formal services. However, all the voices in the academic discourse were practitioners and academics, but not the voices of the parent carers themselves. So I felt that in the spirit of social work, which is underpinned by principles of social justice, it was important that we had a platform where we could test these theories with with the parent carers of these children and find out whether this was their experience or not. I went in, Duane, very much with an open mind, thinking religion could be a barrier, culture could be a barrier, informal support. There may be a greater availability, which is why they don't need, these families aren't accessing formal support. So I went in with a very open mind. I in no way went in looking for racism or, looking for an excuse to sort of criticize practitioners in any way. It was more about going in with an open mind and finding out what was the reality. And that was the reason why I did the research. So that was my last practitioner job, was working with that group of families, and I was very keen to involve them in my research. So I interviewed 20 parent carers of Black and minority ethnic children who were life limited from England and Wales, and some fascinating findings as a result of that research. It was very challenging. It was very, very challenging personally as a parent. I found it very difficult listening to some of the stories about the experiences of being a carer of a life limited child. It was very challenging in terms of trying to access a group who, for various reasons, were perhaps not that easy to access. Or willing to participate in research. I'm really fortunate in that I speak several South Asian languages, and because of the terminology and language I'm able to use, which is very medicalized around, say, life limited children, the parents trusted me. They trusted me, and they welcomed me into their homes, and they were willing to share their very personal experiences with me.
Wow.
So
That sounds
when you
amazing.
think about where I came from, I went to school in the Midlands. I went to school in Birmingham when I came back at the age of 15, and it was fascinating because we were the only BME family, the only South Asian family in a whole school. You know, we were on the outskirts of Birmingham in a place called Rubery. I don't know if you've heard of it, on the border near Worcester. So, you know, I went to school there, and we were the only family, and there were huge challenges. And I remember the first time the Handsworth riots, you know, they kicked off, and I didn't know what racism was. And I remember seeing a boy walking down the stairs, you know, in between changing classes, and he said to another child, he said, "I'm racist." And I didn't know what the word racist meant, but the way he said it made me realize I don't think that's good, you know, and I think that has something to do with me. So when I think about all those experiences, where I've come from and where I'm at, you know, I remember in schools, careers day, careers officer saying, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, I'd like to be a teacher. And he said, "Reconsider it. How about being a nursery nurse?" You know, and then and I look at that, and I look at, you know, I feel honoured, privileged, grateful to be a social work lecturer. So I think, you know, it's a long journey. So achieving the PhD, it's really, it's sort of like, it's really affirming, you know, and it's something to be really proud of, because it was a long journey. It was a difficult journey. There were many, many challenges to overcome, and I just feel like there's a massive sense of achievement. So it's not about promotion, it's not about pay, it's not about anything like that. It's just about a massive sense of achievement and overcoming a range of barriers.
Wow. And that's so, in terms of kind of theory and approach, what would you say students should be studying and researching right now?
I think in social work, we've always talked about anti-racist social work, but I think the time is now to move, take a step further and start looking at critical race theory. I think it's a fantastic theory, because it not only encourages you to explore barriers that are faced by individuals, be they individual personalized barriers or institutional barriers, but it also encourages you to look at and explore solutions. Okay, so we know there's lots of research out there that shows that there are black and minority ethnic groups experience racism. However, we need to go a step further. We need to look at how can we address these issues? How can we include BME voices in research? How can we give platforms to BME voices in research? Because quite often we look at research and we apply that to all groups in society. However, when you look at the research, it's only being done with white groups, and those research findings and those solutions may not be applicable to BME groups. And then people say, "Oh, this intervention isn't working with this family." Well, that's because that isn't appropriate to that group's culture, ethnicity, religious or family norms, and so on. So it's about critical race theory is very empowering, I think, and it shifts from being anti-racist to actually taking action, be that in relation to our practice or in relation to research. Yeah, so.
Thank you. And the third question is, what advice would you give to the next generation of social work students coming into the profession?
I would say that always challenge, ask questions, be critical, and be critical of yourself, your institutions, your practice. Do it in a professional way. Do it in an appropriate way, because students often say to me that they are afraid of being labelled as trouble causers, or, you know, being ostracised or excluded from processes because they've challenged. And I say, well, use legislation, use research evidence, do it appropriately, speak to the correct person in the correct manner, use all these tools, use networks. You know, one of the best things that somebody taught me when I was on the social work course, somebody came in, a fantastic lady called Charlotte Williams, who's a professor of social work. I don't know if you've come across her. She was absolutely wonderful, and she came in and she talked about anti-oppressive practice and anti-discriminatory practice, and she said, on your own, people won't hear you, but if you get together with a few more people, people will have to listen to your challenge. And I really took that on board. You know, build networks, seek advice, seek support. I'm fortunate to be part of a group called Black and Minority Ethnic Women in Academia Support Network, and you know, the women there as part of that academic platform, that group, are so supportive in terms of, you know, acknowledging the negative experiences we may have. They're also supportive in terms of coming up with solutions, resources. At any point, if I'm stuck, I know that I can go to that group, and there's a tremendous amount of support. And that's across disciplines, so it's not limited to social work, it's all sorts of disciplines. And you soon realise that these issues are common to most institutions and most subjects and disciplines. So yeah, I would really encourage people to, social work students, to challenge and be critical. When you're given a resource, look at who's saying that, why do you think they're saying that? Ah, right, okay, whose interests does that serve?
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah.
those are that would be my advice to social work students.
You know, that's sage advice. That I think it's fantastic, and I think with lockdown, I think that's something I've seen online, is the connections being built with all the students across the country, and I think you've summarised that perfectly. So firstly, I'd just like to say thank you for giving me your time. I feel like I could talk to you all evening about your experiences. So, you know, thank you for giving up your time. If viewers want to get in touch with us, we are on Twitter, we're the @socialworkbohemian, so it's @SW If you'd like to email us, it's studentsocialworkers@outlook.com, and I'm also on Twitter, and it's Duane_Phillips_. Thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you all again. Take care. Bye.